Welcome to Simply Caroline, a podcast dedicated to women empowerment where we will discuss a bunch of different subjects such as life, parenting, love, business, money, relationships, healing, recovery, addiction, entrepreneurship, and so much more. A podcast I'll do my best to keep simple, fun, and relatable and bring you tools to help you better your life. So thank you for being here. And here's your host, myself, Caroline Blanchard. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for being with us again this week. This week I have a really special guest, a guest that I met on Instagram and fell in love with, Shawn Woltz. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Caroline.
So let me tell you a little bit about Shawn. So a lot of you know that I've been in recovery for about 10 years now. So I had a major overdose 10 years ago. It was not planned. It was, unfortunate and everything. But for me, it was my wake-up call that I had a problem and I needed help and I needed to clearly change something in my life because I was not in control of what was going on anymore. So I chose to take the path of, rehab and then I really fell into personal development. AA wasn't for me. It's for a lot of people. It wasn't for me. It wasn't my route. But I've stayed quiet about my sobriety for a bit because, whether you want it or not, it's a taboo subject. And it's something that we don't want to be associated to. And it's something that we don't want to have the tag of being an addict or an alcoholic. Anyway, long story short, when I met Shawn on Instagram, she has a title that says it all. We Get to Quit. And I was just like, oh, look at this. That's pretty cool. And she's young and she's gorgeous. And I started following her. And then I told her, you know what? I really need to know your story because she is so inspiring. But what's super inspiring for me is that Shawn did not need to fall to the bottom of the barrel and lose significant stuff or have a significant life event to finally realize, hey, I have a problem. So basically her and I are a bit the opposite. I had to have a major kick and she realized it and used her wisdom, even with her young age, of like, hey, I need to do something. So Shawn, tell us a bit, tell me a little bit about, how did you get to start We Get to Quit?
Thank you, Caroline. I am so honored to be here. So about 15 months ago, I finally quit drinking. And I say finally because somewhere along the lines, my intuition was nudging me that I am such a different person when I'm drinking and when I'm hungover. And I have always had this feeling of there is a greater purpose for me. I have a greater potential to be living out, and I wasn't living that. And because I'm kind of like an all or nothing type of person, the actual thought of nothing is such a safer place for me because I take the option off the table where I don't have to moderate. I don't have to try to make alcohol work for me. I don't have to just go back and forth and spend all of the mental energy on it. It's just not something that I'm going to do. And throughout the years, I was trying to quit. I tried to quit many times. This is the third time I've quit. And for a significant little periods of time, besides my pregnancies. And I just, the thing that was holding me back the whole time was what you were talking about, the stigma about sobriety, the fact that I did not want to call myself an alcoholic. I didn't want to be in AA. I thought my life was going to be over. I thought it was going to be boring. I thought, how am I going to have fun? How are people going to like me? How am I going to meet anybody? And I was just so worried and so fearful about it all. And I didn't realize, and I felt so alone too. I felt like I was the only person feeling like this. And so about 9 months into this sobriety, I was confirming that my intuition was right. I was thriving. I was becoming this higher potential that I always knew I had. My life was going so well and I felt so good that I thought, you know what? I need to put something out there for people who might be feeling the same way that I felt, where their intuition is telling them that they're better off without alcohol, but they don't really have anybody to like look up to, or a positive sobriety influence, because we're all just thinking that it's this terrible thing. So I created We Get to Quit because I wish that I would have had that person saying, you know what, you are having these feelings for a reason. And sobriety is actually really amazing. It's really empowering. It's really the greatest way you can spend this precious life, being fully alive, fully aware. It's an up level in your life. And so I wanted to kind of change the perspective for people of, instead of dragging my feet through the mud and thinking, oh, I have to quit. It's, I get to quit. This is an honor. It is a wake up. It's you're finally reconnecting to the real you. And it's like the best way to be. And so let's spread that message of sobriety. And then the other part of it was I wanted to create a community so that people wouldn't feel alone. That's really, really the deepest reason why I did it, was because I knew if I was feeling this way, others had to too. And I just really didn't want them to feel alone. And I wanted them to be able to step out of it in a really hopeful and empowered light.
And congratulations for that. And where were you 10 years ago? I wish, honestly, I would have had someone like you and something to hold on to like this, because, not to get into my full story, but before, having this tragic overdose, and the thing is, like, some people will ask me, like, well, how can you overdose, when it's too much? But let's just keep in mind that when you start losing your judgment, you lose your judgment. You're not really, all there to think and calculate and evaluate. So, but even before that, I had those feelings that you were saying. You call it intuition. I was calling it my conscience of like, this is not okay. And I was super, I was this super high achiever. I was successful in business. I was a successful mom. My kids had everything. Everyone on the outside thought like I had it all together and I was perfect. And I was a volunteer for this. And I was the school mom for this. So, on the outside, I wasn't the drunk sitting on the side of the street, like with my paper bag and homeless. On the outside, I had it all together. On the inside, I didn't. And I think we do have this voice, call it however you want, that tells you there has to be something else. There has to be a way that I can feel better. And I know that, just to finish this thought, sorry, but one big thing was, and I was kind of reaching out. I called for a rehab center, like most of them was too expensive. The other part that was public, there was waiting lists of years. And then I was just like, well, I'm not in trouble like they are. So, I'm not going to use those resources. Every time I would hear about sobriety, it was ads on the radio of like, don't drink and drive, be sober, blah, blah, blah. But that was all the boring people. And then there was my friends of like, well, if you don't drink, you're boring because, hey, if you're not a party girl, what are you? So there was no positive models that I could be like, oh my goodness, I want to be like her. So thank you for doing that, because what I find amazing about you as well is that you're really doing it just to share and just to give, resources to other people. And for me, the other reason why I didn't want to quit was, well, I shouldn't say that, but the other reason why I didn't want to admit that I had a problem is because the only option I had was to go to AA. And I was like, oh my goodness, I am not putting that on my resume. It was like, really, like, how could I live with saying I'm in AA? So it's all that bad stigma. And I know that, like me, you started drinking at a pretty young age. And again, I'm going to let you answer all of that in one pack, but we think like, where were the parents letting you drink at 12 or 13 or 14? Well, they didn't know, because we're good at hiding stuff and we're good at manipulating and lying, but we start quite often just to feel a little better and to be accepted. You don't start having a drinking problem the first day you drink. This is a build-up. So talk a bit about your journey with that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for all of that. It's really unfortunate how much longer we prolong our drinking because of all of that, because we feel like we're the only people and a lot of us don't want to go to AA. There's so many people that do well with it, but for the majority, they'll, just like us, they'll keep drinking for years just because they think that's the only option. And fortunately, it's definitely not the only option anymore. And we can maybe talk about that later. But so yeah, I started drinking when I was young, when I was 14, and I was a very anxious child. I was very anxious, very fearful. I had anxiety. I remember I had an ulcer in elementary school. And the only reason why I remember that is because I wasn't allowed to have the chocolate milk, because apparently chocolate's bad for ulcers. And I didn't realize that when I started drinking, that it was maybe helping those things. But I quickly became very dependent, very compulsive. Like I did not feel normal unless I was reaching for a cigarette or reaching for alcohol. And I was just very addicted, I had a very addictive personality. And what I thought was just a normal thing, I thought that all kids do this. And I don't know, I actually just started thinking about this morning for the first time. I was kind of the younger kid always. I was the youngest in my class. I was the youngest of my friends. I was like the youngest of my cousins type of thing. And I don't know if maybe I thought that being older, being grown up means drinking, and partying. And so I thought maybe it made me feel a little bit cooler or older or what, but I just got very swept into it all. And I just thought that it was the normal thing to do was to party. And I didn't realize that there was all of these kids in my high school that they didn't party. They were studying and they were caring about their grades. And then there was a whole other group. What's that?
Sorry, weren't these ones the nerds?
Yeah. I mean, and I look back and I say, I wish I was one of those. I wish I would have done that. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other kids that were the athletic kids, and they were super into their sports and stuff. But I was thinking that we all were waking up and smoking pot before school and leaving to smoke cigarettes at lunch break and then drinking that evening at someone's house. I thought we were all doing that and then it was normal. And so I didn't realize what I was doing to my brain. And I think that I had a predisposition. I always say for people like me who are have super addictive personalities, that I feel like our brain chemistry is a little off and we need a little bit more serotonin, a little bit more dopamine, a little bit more this and that in order to feel good or have fun or feel normal even. And so I was feeding that unnaturally and unhealthfully through my partying and my drinking and not realizing what I was doing to my developing brain. And I got in trouble a lot. I got arrested a couple times. I honestly don't even know how I even graduated. I think they were just happy to get rid of me. But I didn't have aspirations. I didn't see myself in another light. I couldn't even picture what I wanted to do as an adult. You know how some people just have their career picked out and they know what they want to do, and I didn't have any of that. I just had a very, very closed off picture of what life was about. And I just thought life is about me getting drunk. Like that's all I care about. I just want to be high. I just want to be drunk. I just want to smoke my cigarettes. And so when I went to college, I had no aspirations. I didn't know what I wanted to major in or anything like that, but my parents really wanted to just get me out of my party town, and get me away from the people I was partying with, because I was starting to kind of get into the heavier drugs by the end of the senior year and all of that. So I tagged along with my best friend to Santa Barbara and I went to school there. And college was kind of more of the same thing for me. And I'm really lucky because I was with the same boyfriend throughout the whole 5 years. It took me 5 years to graduate. But I'm lucky because he kind of, I think, kept me out of a lot of trouble because I was just home partying with him instead of out in the wild of college life. But the thing that I think about during that time is, yes, I continued to rage. You know, I was partying really hard. But the thing that I haven't realized until I started thinking about my story really is that why wasn't I kind of getting my act together and wanting more out of life out of that point? And I look back at that relationship and I was very codependent. I was not happy in that relationship at all, but I didn't have any tools to stand up for myself, to have boundaries, to talk about what I needed and what I wanted. All I did was whatever he wanted to do. And that was my safe place, is like, I'm in this relationship. We're just doing what he wants to do. I'm just going to go along for the ride. And the point of all of this is I was so unhappy, but I just kept drinking to make that all go away and to forget about that. And I think it's important to talk about, because I think no matter what age you're at or what relationship you're in, if it's a boyfriend or if you're married or girlfriend or whatever, I think a lot of us, if we're unhappy, instead of figuring out what we need to do to get out of certain situations and to do better for ourselves, we drink, you know?
Well, you know what? I think that what you're talking here is toxic relationships. And
yeah.
And that too, as a bad connotation because we don't want any. But quite often it will take a while before you actually put that tag on someone in your life because they're not doing something that is too obvious or whatever. You know, there's different kind of toxicity, but it is toxic when it's not bringing the best out of you and when it's sucking out your energy consistently, then it's toxic. And I find that one thing with, you know, highly addictive personalities like us that are numbing it. I'm not talking about on the sober side because I still have an addictive personality, and that too is something that I need to accept. It's me, but now I know how to deal with it. But when I was numbing it, you know, you don't see yourself, you don't see the worth in yourself to actually put the energy. So thinking about leaving a boyfriend, you're like, then I'll have to move and blah blah. For me right there, it would stop. I would just packing. No, I'm not packing. I'm gonna go have a glass of wine.
Right.
You know? And it's just like everything becomes solvable with a beer or a glass of wine or whatever is your evil. So it's, I think basically it's us, you know, having a very big lack of self-worth.
Absolutely.
You know, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I think that, I mean, there are stats to prove that drinking went up heavily during the pandemic, but I think that was a big part of it is people were stuck at home with their spouses and realizing, you know, big things were coming out for people like, wow, you know, we really have some disagreements, you know, spousal stuff that I think came out for a lot of people. And that was our way of dealing with it was like, well, I guess I'm just going to drink my way through this because that's, you know.
We're talking about alcohol here, but all in all, it's like escaping. So some people
escaping. Yep.
People will do it with shopping. And it's funny because we can use those terms as a joke, like, oh, I'm a shopaholic. You know, a lot of my friends say that as a joke. And I'm like, you know, it's a disease. So
retail therapy. Yeah,
exactly. There's so many things that you're going to see on social media or whatever that are using real problems, real issues, and then just putting it on everything so that when you actually suffer from these things, you don't want that tag. But my point to that is that it's, you know, compensating. And like, if I look at my story, I know the traumas that I had. And I know that when I met you, and I'm going to bring it up. So when I met you, you know, we talked about your childhood and we talked about a lot of things. And I was just like, but your parents are still together. They loved you. They gave you everything. So for me, it was like, you know, how I really thought it was coming from trauma or from different things that could be combined with genetics. And then at some point he said, well, there's something that happened to me, but I don't know if it's that. So talk a bit about that, because I think that you did put, you know, your finger on it to that day of like, that could be a part of my history, but sometimes it happens when we're so young that we don't even realize it's part of our history.
Yeah. So when I was 2 years old, my mom and I got kidnapped and held hostage. And I know that it was a severely traumatic experience for my mom who went through it. And then for my dad on the other side of wondering if we were going to be okay. And for me, I kind of I did wonder, did that affect me because I was so young? But, you know, people are always saying that we build our subconscious programmings and the way we see the world when we're in the womb until 7 years old is like our biggest programming. Mm-hmm. And I look back and I think, you know, I think that's where I became this anxious child that was so fearful and so paranoid all of the time. And and it was really interesting because I I always had anxiety like about my parents dying or my parents leaving. And then the other part of it is I'm an only child too. So I was very just maybe enmeshed with them, maybe a little codependent. We were super, super close, you know. And the kidnapping, I think, affected all of us in the sense of like, we just need to like just be together at all times, you know, don't do anything scary, don't do anything that is go, you know, my parents didn't really ever want me to like, you know, some of my friends like went on trips to other countries at certain points and stuff like that. My parents were like, hell no, like you're not doing that, you know? And I wasn't able to like spend the night at my friends' houses until I think I was in high school. I never wanted to be left alone with a babysitter, you know, stuff like that. So I know that it did affect the way I saw the world and how safe I felt, you know, and I think it just contributed to this just anxiousness about myself. So I think that did affect. I'm
sure 100% that it did affect it because it did shake your sense of stability and security. And regardless if you felt it when you were 2 or not, we lived through our parents when we're kids. So everything they feel, we feel, you know, so your mom's anxiety probably went on you. Not that I want to put the whole, like you had those drinking problems because of that, because you had to have also, you know, the addictive personality. But, you know, a combination of all of that is where quite often we start self-medicating. And like I said before, you don't start alcoholic. You know,
right.
You start partying one night and being like, that wasn't too bad. And quite often, actually, if I remember, my first one was not fun at all. And I didn't even like the taste and I was sick. And, you know, but the feeling of numbness, the feeling of like not feeling pain, that feeling of comfort was overpowering everything else and did for the rest, like the following 30 years, basically. Wake up like and say, that's it. You know what? I've done all these crazy things. You know, and I know that your parents really supported you through the whole thing. Because again, your parents won't throw you to the street when you do something like that. And I'm a parent now of adults. We always think, well, no, mine is different and mine, it's just temporary. And, you know, we don't see the gravity of something. So tell us a bit about that.
So after I graduated college is when I really started spiraling out of control and hitting my rock bottom. I finally got the courage to break up with a guy. But the thing was that I didn't think about was this was the first time I was ever alone. I went from living with my parents to living in the dorms with my best friend to living with him for 5 years. So it was the first time I had ever been alone. And I had graduated college, and in college, I actually finally found something I was interested in it, and it was exercise and health science. And I started learning about the body and about how to better treat it, you know, nutrition and how exercise affects you. And so I was actually really interested in that. And I really did try to pursue working out and eating right and all that. But I was having such a double life because I would wake up in the morning and try to be healthy and I would work out and stuff. And then, you know, the afternoon rolls around and I would pull out a cigarette and then I would start drinking and then I would, you know, smoke a whole pack of cigarettes that night and then feel so much shame and just let myself down. And so I was living that double life. And then I was also not finding the career path that I really wanted to be in. And I couldn't fully go into like fitness and nutrition because I knew I wasn't this the epitome of health. So I still had those self-esteem issues and just really low self-worth. And so instead of going, okay, let's do this, let's get healthy and let's try to help other people and move into that type of platform, I did the same thing. I was coping by just partying and not caring. And while all my friends were starting their careers and becoming more responsible and going to sleep at reasonable hours because they have to get up in the morning, I was spiraling out of control. I was hanging out with people that I shouldn't be, and I was getting worse and worse. And the progression of what I was drinking was getting worse. Before all this, I was kind of like a beer drinker because I could drink as many beers as I want, all throughout the night. I'd never get sick if I was drinking beer. Well, for some reason, I started drinking whiskey, and I was going out and partying and going to the clubs and drinking whiskey and all that. And then when all of my friends would go home and go to sleep, I would drive to the gas station and buy more alcohol and then drink by myself for the rest of the night, basically until I passed out, because I didn't have a stopping point like all of my other friends. I could not stop. I would just keep going until there was no alcohol left. Like that was my endpoint. And I was miserable. I was stuck in that cycle where I'd wake up in the morning. I was so hungover. My hangovers my anxiety was through the roof. I thought I was going to die so many times. I wanted to bring myself to the hospital so many times. And I was blacking out all the time and, waking up in scenarios where I had no idea where I was. And it was just getting really, really bad. And the self-esteem, the self-worth, all of that was just non-existent. Because I didn't think that I knew how to handle life. I was just like, everyone else has their act together. Like everyone else can do their dishes and can clean their house and can not get a parking ticket every single week when the street sweeper comes. Why am I having all these issues? Why can't I take care of myself? And so eventually I ended up getting a DUI, and I think it was a blessing. I'm so thankful that it happened, because I'm so thankful I never hurt anybody or anybody else, because I was drinking or I was driving all the time. And that was the wake up call I needed. I didn't quit right away. But it was finally that wake up call of it was the aha moment of there's two streets here. You're going down this street and you know how this is going to end. And so you have to choose another path. And if you don't want what's happening, what's going on. And so finally, it was enough of a motivation for me to go, okay, what does it take to get myself on another path? And so I think that's when I started looking into self-development and self-help and starting to learn, just really simple things of starting to take care of myself and to care about myself a little bit more, as learning a little bit more of I need to love myself type of thing. And I started training for a triathlon. And I think that was a really pivotal moment for me, because it gave me another goal. It gave me another focus that was pretty consuming, because I had to change a lot of different things about my life in order to train for it. I had to eat better because of it. I had to go to sleep at a normal hour because I had to get up and work out. And so it sounds kind of funny, but it really was an integral part of me finally saying, okay, I can't drink anymore. It's not an option, because I can't be healthy and drink. I can't stop. And so I just have to take it off the table. And then I also wanted to quit smoking cigarettes. And so that's how I did that too. And so I trained for this triathlon. I finally became somebody that I was proud of. My self-confidence was rising. I was taking care of myself, and I was just seeing myself in that light that I knew deep down inside I always had. And so that was a moment, a turnaround moment for me.
Yeah.
And then,
sorry, but I will correct myself saying you didn't hit rock bottom like me, because first of all, I was wrong to say you did hit. Everyone has a different rock bottom. So I do want to correct myself on that. That's not what I meant. I meant you didn't put your life in danger, but that too is not true, because we are putting ourselves like life-threatening positions by doing these kind of like erratic behaviors. So I wanted to correct myself there, and I want to congratulate you because, I trained for a triathlon as well, but I did the opposite of you. I had to seek help and have someone guide me. And then my triathlon was the focus not to drink. You did the opposite. And I find that absolutely, like, first of all, so strong, because, no one knows until you're in that position how difficult minutes can be. Like, to say,
yeah,
this minute I'm not taking anything, because now I am one day at a time. Back then I was at some point 1 second at a time. I was just like, take your next breath and you can do it, but I did seek help. You did it on your own, and that's strength. And congratulations, Shawn.
thank you. I appreciate that. I think that is so cool and funny that we both did a triathlon.
Yes. So if you want to quit drinking, just go do a triathlon. No, there's other ways, but yes.
Yeah.
And then you manifested what?
Okay. So at that point, I'm feeling good about myself. I'm starting to, I am really kind of into manifestation at this point where I'm like, okay, if we want the life that we want, like, we have to put it out there of what we're actually seeking. And I knew that at that point I wanted to find a guy and somebody unlike any person that I've ever dated in the past. I want the person to have a steady job and to be a good dad one day and have their act together. I wanted somebody responsible. And so basically I had to become responsible myself. It's like, if you're wanting something in life, you have to obtain those qualities yourself in order to attract that person. You can't, because I'm like, I want somebody like this. I'm not going to find that person partying at 3 a.m. Like, I don't want to be with that anymore. I want to be with the guy who's been sleeping since 10, And so I was really working on developing the qualities of the person that I was attracting. And I eventually met a great guy. He's my husband now. And I was really excited because he didn't care that I didn't drink. He actually thought it was really cool. And he was probably, what you'd call a normie. He drinks, and he drinks every night, but he can stop after 1 or 2. It's not a big deal to him. It's not what he's focusing on all night, and I felt very safe at that point with somebody who could do that. And so, just fast forward a couple years, because I didn't have the tools, the community, the support of anybody sober around me. I didn't, I wasn't immersing myself with sober anything. I didn't have any sober friends or sober support groups or anything like that. At some point, I just thought, what? I can probably just start drinking again. Like, that was probably all a phase. I'm just this responsible person now, and unfortunately, I talked myself into drinking again. And I was so scared to lose what I had built up to that I never let myself get out of control per se. There was a couple times here or there that I would take it too far. But my husband would remind me, like, that is not the person I fell in love with. Like, you know, I saw glimpses of that past you, and, you know, I'm not interested in that. This was before we were married, so it was an easier conversation for him to be like, I actually really love sober you, you know? And so it was easier for me to keep it under control. And I feel like I kind of transitioned into the gray area drinker, you know, for this like second half of my life, because it wasn't like I was in the closet chugging vodka because I needed it or anything, but things were just, they weren't as good as I knew they could be. And again, it took me back to that place in life where I was like, I know I have a higher potential, and I'm not there because I'm choosing to drink every night. And like, I remember there was a point where I was going to this really, really intense workout at 5:45 in the morning, but I was drinking 2 martinis every night before I would go to this workout class. And it's like, what was I doing to my body? Like, what is the point? What is the point of going to this workout class if I'm drinking 2 martinis the night before? And I was just kind of, I was like the typical high functioning, or just the normal gray area drinker, where they aren't on the side of the road with a paper bag, like you said, but they're not thriving. They know there's more. I didn't like being hungover every day, but yet I continued on doing that. And, fast forward to when we had 2 daughters, and
I just want to stop you there 1 second.
Yeah.
Because you said something crucial there. You said I was having 2 martinis. So most people would tell you, you don't have a problem. I know, I've been there.
Yes.
Being able to just have my 1 bottle of wine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told by people, you don't have a problem. You only have that, and it's okay. But it's like, we're working hard on controlling this part of keeping it there. But again, it's your conscience in the back of your mind. Of course it's there, but it's your conscience that is telling you, like, no, it's not okay. And it's you at 5:45 in the morning being like, I don't feel safe at all. I mean, these are all the red flags that say, hey, you have an issue.
And it's really funny that you bring that up, because the gym that I went to, the owner of it, is a good friend, and she actually wrote the book. Oh, it's not right here. She wrote the book, Changing the Conversation, and she actually got sober herself at some point. And I remember at that gym, she had you log all of what you were eating and drinking. And I remember at that time I was putting 2 martinis, and she wrote a little note at some point that said, why are you drinking these 2 martinis? And I thought that was really interesting, and it did make me wonder, like, okay, why am I doing this? And then I felt like a failure, because it's like, why am I doing this? I don't need to be doing this, but yet I couldn't just not do it. I had to have something. And I remember for a long time, I was trying to have 1 martini. I was trying to have 1. That was my goal always. But then I was like, okay, that was like my splurge, is like, I'm going to have 2, So it's just interesting. But
this is a big flag of having a drinking problem, or any kind of addictive problem, is when you need to always talk to yourself and discipline yourself and this and that and that. That's when you have to realize it's stronger than you. You control it for so long, and at some point it's gonna have the upper end if you don't take control of it.
Trying to negotiate. And that's why I said the all or nothing, the nothing is just such a more peaceful place for me, because I can just relax and not even worry about it. It's like, no, that's just not, I don't even worry about it anymore. And it's just such a better place to be.
Mm.
So I don't know how much time we have because I don't have a clock in here, but I'll breeze through. I'll try to breeze through the next portion, but
you have no time limit, Shawn.
Oh, thank you. Don't tell me that. We will talk for 10 hours. Okay. So I was in that place of knowing that I wanted to quit, but not doing it. And so about a couple months before I actually quit, I really was taking it into consideration for my life and just thinking, this life is so short and precious and special. You know, why wouldn't I try to be the best version of myself? You know, why wouldn't I try to get the best and the most out of this life? And I just kept my nudging of my intuition was just so strong. It just kept saying like, yes. And like I said in the beginning, I wasn't trusting that because I wasn't seeing the messaging anywhere of like, do it. Mm-hmm. I promise you, it's going to be so good if you do it. You know, it was just me trying to tell myself, do it. And then I'm like, oh, you know, nobody I know doesn't drink. It's like everybody drinks around me. And it was such a scary thing to do. But for some reason, I finally decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm tired of going back and forth. I'm just going to do it. And then, so I quit January 2021. And I knew that I made the right decision. I felt so much better. And not to mention the whole period of raising my daughters when they're little and trying to get through it by drinking because of all the, you know, how stressful it is to be a mom and all the other moms are drinking. And it's become this thing where drinking as a mother is celebrated and it's like a whole culture now. And then you throw in the pandemic where everyone's like, oh, I'm drinking in the afternoon now, you know, and you just start doing all these things to cope with life. And you're not present for your kid, you know, well, I'll just say for me, I wasn't present for my kids. I was buzzed, you know, and I was just tired at the end of the night and I just wanted to go to bed. And then when I was taking these little breaks to kind of see what it was like, I had so much energy at the end of the night that after I put them to sleep, I would have energy to clean the house and, you know, it was just so much better. And I actually thought that alcohol was helping me be more patient and more easygoing and all of that. And what I realized is it was actually making me less patient because all you care about is like, okay, like when's my next drink? You don't care about actually playing together or anything like that. You just, you know, everything's still, it's revolved around alcohol. And it was so just
brave. Sorry, I'm cutting you again. It's so brave of you right now to be honest on that, because we never want to say that as a mom that I'm not 100% present. We always want to say like, I'm Wonder Woman. I was the best mom ever. But like, I remember me coming home from work and I would pick up the kids and there was not tons of discussion in the car. Like, I was like, hey, how was your day? And I was listening. My mission was to get here and open my bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Then when I was drinking my glass of wine, they could tell me in every single detail how they shred their pants or their pen or whatever. You know, I was just like listening, but before that, it was just like, okay, cut the details, like,
yes.
And the thing is, like, after, you know, when you're in your period of your before drinking, your anxiety inside is a fight. You know, yes. Whether you let it out or not, it's a fight inside. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll pay attention to your kids, you'll give them everything they need, but inside it's just like, oh my gosh, it's almost like your glass of wine will become your oxygen.
Yeah.
For me, it was wine, as you probably noticed by now, but yeah. So it's very brave, Shawn, to say that, because also you're not talking about a distant past of like 20 years ago. You're
Mm-hmm.
living it, and that's why I love you. It's because you're sharing while you're living it, even though, there's still a chance that you could relapse, because there's always a chance that we can relapse. But it seems like people are comfortable starting to share just when it's been years, because they have and you, it's been a year and a half, which is, by the way, incredible.
Thank
But
you.
you're still sharing as you go. And that's why I want to encourage everyone on Instagram, follow Shawn. Because honestly,
Oh,
whether you have a drinking problem or not, it's uplifting and inspiring. So, sorry, I did cut you there, but I'll let you go.
thank you. Yeah, I just know a couple things, like memories popped up when you were saying that. And I remember a couple of the times when I would take my girls to the park, I would put wine or beer in my water bottle. And I look back on that. I mean, you're saying, it's not that far in the past. I look at that and I'm so sad that I felt like I couldn't just take a couple hours and be at the park and just sit and breathe and enjoy the fresh air and all of that. I thought that I needed to drink to get through it. And then the thing that nobody talks about is I drove them home. All of us moms who are at play dates or at the restaurants or whatever, and dads too. But we're driving our kids home after these occasions. And that's a whole nother discussion, because you never want to be in the position where your kids are sick at night and you have to drive them to the hospital, or just your kid needs you in the middle of the night and you need to not be, zonked out.
That was one of my biggest fears, actually. It was, what if I pass out when I fall asleep and something happens
Yeah.
and they can't wake me up,
Yeah. And
That was one of my fear. And actually, you're talking about the park, like going to watch, my third one, I decided to coach her when she was playing soccer 4 and 5, because I was just like, I'll be doing something. So,
right.
but the other ones, like when you watch games, soccer games, baseball games, oh my gosh, it's long.
Oh God.
And they're 7 or 8, like
Yeah.
they're not even gonna touch the ball during the whole game. It was honestly the joke. Like, we would have our vodka. I was drinking vodka and cranberry. Like, the moms on the stand,
Mm-hmm.
we all had our drinks. And like you
Yeah.
say, it was all perfectly acceptable. And we would even share and laugh and be like, the one who only had our coffee, we were like, oh, poor you.
Yes.
It's like we don't see the consequences after. We're just like, this is harmless. It's just keeping
Yeah.
my anxiety down.
And that makes me think about also when we're trying to bond through alcohol, we feel like we're going to be, taking it to the next level with these women. And it is so not true that we need alcohol to connect with each other. And in fact, the only way you can actually really connect with each other is to be real and raw and authentic, and your real self that's not having the liquid courage and all of that. And also for me, I was the shittiest friend. I never listened to what my friends were talking about. I never, dove in and really cared about what they're going through and asked them questions about their life. I would kind of be there superficially, but I'm like, okay, let's pour the drinks. Like, let's get the drinks going. And then that's all I cared about, is like keeping them going, and I was never connecting. I was never caring. And that's the thing about me in sobriety. I have so much more integrity, and I'm just so much more trustworthy and such a better friend, such a better mother, such a better citizen, just everything in life has gotten better because of that. And so when we think we need alcohol in order to connect, we really are doing ourselves a disservice and connection is the opposite of addiction. That's all we ever do want, is we want connection, and we want to be loved, and we want to be seen and heard and all of that. And alcohol is just prolonging us from that and creating fake versions of ourselves.
Yeah. And, again, I want to congratulate you because you are being so brutally honest, even about like not being a good friend. And I know that there are some listeners that when they heard you say that, they were just like, well, you didn't have your act together. I have my act together. And I'm listening to you saying stuff and I'm like, that was totally me. Even though like I was the one invited everywhere because I was so fun, really, like while you were talking to me, I was just like, where's the bottle of wine or whatever. There was something in my mind. I wasn't really 100% present. And that is if you gave me a drink right when I got to the party, then I would listen. But I mean, you are brutally honest, and I admire that because, like I said, we tend to judge all of what you said, but we all do it. It's just, I think we're not honest enough to even admit it to ourselves, because that would be admitting that there's issues and admitting that, it's not that great version of yourself that you think you are when you're drinking. And, we're talking a lot about, I was thinking about that, or I was doing that, or like I remember me saying to someone, and that should have been one of my biggest red flag. He told me like, yeah, we're going for a supper. And I said, are you going to pick up a bottle of wine? And he's like, no one's drinking. And I was just like, what?
Panic.
Imagine a supper without wine.
Yeah.
Right there. That was the biggest red flag. But I could not imagine, like for me, it was like, what's the purpose of going there? Like, why are you going to visit people if you're not going to bottle of wine, which is sad because it's so socially accepted as well. And it's almost like we're raised this way. You're invited somewhere, bring a bottle of wine or bring flowers or bring something, but the bottle of wine is always, that's how I was really raised, and my, my habits. But all of what we're saying now is that we've been wired or we've wired ourselves a certain way that our brain is really thinking one thing. And what you did is that you broke out of that shell. And that's why I admire you so much as well, because, you found your help, you found your resources, and you went to get them, and you're keeping yourself accountable. But I really suggest to anyone who is feeling this way, you don't have to do it alone. I didn't do it alone for sure. And actually, for me, it started being successful once I've let my walls down a little, and I said, okay, people. And honestly, like you said, some of the best relationships ever in my life, I met them sober, and I've always been sober with them.
Yeah.
It's being it's finally feeling life. The good and
exactly.
And the bad is not always, I know that, and I know for you too, like those obstacles that, again, our brain, the first moment when that obstacle arrives, you're like, oh my gosh, I could use a glass of wine. And it's so socially acceptable. Like if you look on Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, it's like, the picture of the glass of wine, I deserve it. It's like,
right.
That these values that are given to us, that it's acceptable, we need to decompress, we need to de-stress, we need to be happier, we need to party, we need to, forget. There's always a need, basically. But going through all of that sober, it's a whole different ball game. And I think it's just like you feel richer.
Giving away our power to alcohol and to drugs. We aren't seeing ourselves as capable and able and strong enough to get through hard times or even to celebrate the good times without it. And so we're doing ourselves a disservice by doing that. And every single time we're sending a message to ourselves that I'm not big enough for this. I'm not good enough for this. And so we're giving that power away to alcohol. And when you finally do trust in yourself and put the power back to yourself and empower yourself, is when that confidence starts building, and you get through a hard time and then you're like, oh, I actually got through that, and then the next time you have a hard time, you're like, I can do this, and it just builds. It's like a muscle that you have to have that trust in yourself that you can actually do it. And when you finally start seeing it like that, you're like, yeah, I don't need alcohol and drugs to have fun or to get through a hard time. And everything, like you said, just becomes more rich.
Yes. And you know what? I'll add something for someone who has been in it for 10 years. And I did have a relapse after a year and a half, by the way. But because I think that that's when I thought too, like, hey, I've been doing that for a year and a half. I'm good. I can have only that one glass of wine because, society will keep offering you. And it's like, it's exhausting. Like waiters, like, it's a beautiful sunny day. Do you want a glass of white wine with your meal? You're like, no, thank you.
Right.
Do you want, and you're like, at some point I was getting mad. Like, could you just leave me alone? I don't want to drink. But my point is, at some point, you can come to a point of being sick of justifying it. So you're like, I'll have that glass of wine. Good. And that was my relapse. It was as silly as that. I had that glass of wine that I didn't say no to. But it's to always remember throughout your sobriety why you chose to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And to never forget that alcohol or drugs or whatever your addiction is more powerful than you. You will not be able to have only one. Believe me, I would love to be able to go, like I go to so many events and things like that, and it's that one glass of champagne and I'm like, why can't I have just that one glass? And even sometimes I'm holding the glass for the picture and I'm like, why can't I have only one sip? I could probably, but this is a dangerous zone and that could be a whole other podcast because some people do think that you can reintegrate it. I'm not in that belief for now. But it's always a slippery slope and I cannot ever let myself forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that we need to accept, that it is more powerful than us. I'm not going to fight it. It's okay. You win. I'm not going to take any. But in closing, Shawn, I really want to encourage people to reach out to people like you, because you do coach people. And, you talking with someone who went through it, not to compare your story to theirs, just because when, like, I remember not too long ago, I had a bad day and I texted Shawn. And it's like I knew when she would read my text that she would understand, and I didn't have to give the explanation, the this, the that, the why, and this and that. It's like we know because we've been through it. So find someone that you can talk to and, follow a community of sober people that are as gorgeous and young and hip as Shawn or as older as me. But what would you leave people with in your biggest piece of advice or wisdom words?
Well, I just think just from thinking about what we've talked today on the podcast is there was always underlying reasons as to why I was drinking. It wasn't just, alcohol and drugs are highly addictive in and of themselves, but there's always underlying things going on. And sometimes you're not going to ever even be able to access those things and that insight until you step away from alcohol for a little bit in order to see what's going on underneath and why you're doing it. And so that is important. And I just think absolutely the community, like when I started We Get to Quit, I didn't realize I was going to embark on this huge, like there are so many people out there actually talking about what I'm talking about and are being positive about sobriety and stuff. And I had no idea they were even there, but it opened these doors for me of all of these incredible sober friends. And we talk to each other all the time in the DMs, some text messaging, so you don't have to have a physical person near you that's sober in order to feel supported. That's the amazing thing about the internet and about Instagram and about social media, is that you can find so much support out there now. And so do that. Find as many sobriety, Instagrams that you can find, listen to sobriety podcasts, read sobriety books, like immerse yourself in it, because that's the only way you're going to feel kind of like supported and surrounded in it all, and that you're not alone.
Yeah, and that you belong, because
Yeah.
I think that when we're in the drinking days and all this consumption days, I should say, we
Mm-hmm.
think that that's the whole world and that's it. The rest are exceptions, but it's pretty much the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
We are exceptions and the rest of the world is okay. So yeah, find that big community. Shawn, thank you so much. Again, like congratulations. Thank you for your honesty. Like it's, remarkable. And I know that you will come back on this podcast. And I know that let's do a deal. Like every year you need to come back and just confirm that
I would love that.
everything's going amazing. And to everyone listening, thank you. If you have, a problem or you think you have a problem, please talk about it to someone. Don't keep it to yourself. Find help. There's a lot of helplines out there. There's meetings. There's so many people on Instagram. There's Shawn Woltz that you can follow on Instagram. And, there's a lot of resources, but definitely give yourself a chance by not doing it alone. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, you can write to me at info@simplycaroline.com. And other than that, I will see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.